Hey everybody, Noah Schmick alongside the voice of the Vandals, Dennis Patchin, for our Talking Vandals segment. Week 2, of course, after Week 2, the St. Thomas game. 37-30, Vandals get the win inside the Kibbie Dome. A whole lot to talk about here, Dennis. Let's talk first, maybe some of the positives, some of your big takeaways from Week 2. What did you like most maybe about the Vandals win?
I think the biggest thing, if you looked at Week 1 and Week 2, was the play of Joshua Wood. Now, Joshua was pretty one-dimensional in that Cougar game and running the football, really couldn't get the passing game going. Credit to Washington State. They fixed some things, they did some things, and not only was he able to run the ball, but he threw the ball first. And I think that's the most important thing as far as his development is. If it's a passing play, let's get the ball out. If it's not, then take off, or the design runs. Very few design runs. One of those was the 59-yarder at the end of the game that he got a touchdown on. That was his 4th touchdown, 3 passing, 1 rushing. So his play was much better, much more confident, seemed more confident in abilities, got multiple receivers involved in throwing the football. So I think that's probably the biggest positive you take out of that game, other than getting the first win in the Thomas Ford Jr. era.
Yeah, I got to give you some credit. Last week on this Talking Vandals segment, you did say St. Thomas is going to come out and they're going to surprise some people and they're going to fight really hard. They especially did that. Is that a credit to St. Thomas, or was it an execution kind of thing on the Vandals side of things? Where, I mean, 37-30, it was. Of course, that late touchdown made it look a lot closer. But was it an execution thing on the defensive side of the ball that the Vandals couldn't stop St. Thomas, or is St. Thomas just a pretty good team?
I think St. Thomas is a team that, in my opinion, probably wins the Pioneer League this season. So if we look back in Week 10 or Week 11 and they're leading that league, people are going to say, well, that's a good win. The problem is nobody knows anything about St. Thomas, so we always assume if we don't know anything about a team, they stink. But this is a team that runs the football and plays defense. Now, they didn't do either one of those very well. They threw the football a little bit more. Their quarterback was two-dimensional, but they also, a situation in that game, they also, played good enough defense, but didn't really stop the run for the Vandals. But they're a physical team, and it was a physical game, and that's why St. Thomas is going to win a lot of games, especially in their league. So I think we're going to look back in 2 months and go, that was a pretty good win by Idaho.
Anything to be worried about when it comes to maybe special teams from what you saw? I mean, I saw, a few bad snaps, maybe the punt that was blocked or kind of muffed around in the backfield. Is there anything that we should be worried about maybe?
I don't think so. I think the punt that L.J. Harm couldn't hang on to was a bad snap. Bounced right before, and those are tricky. And, I've seen him a couple times pick that up. Xander Eccles, who's the deep snapper, long snapper, has been really good. Was really good all of last season. Sometimes you just have one of those days. The extra point that hit the upright near the end of the game was also the result of a bad snap. I don't think so. I thought the coverage on the special teams, the punt coverage was good. The kick coverage was good. They returned the ball better than they had in the first game. If you're a coach or a coordinator or head coach, you want to see improvement especially from week 1 to week 2 now that you've played somebody. I think for the most part, pretty much every aspect of Idaho on both sides of the football and special teams did have some improvement. There was one area, though, that they're going to have to figure out, and that's penalties, okay? Mm-hmm. They had a lot of penalties in the Washington State game. They even had more penalties. Now, part of that is I didn't know who the crew was. So this wasn't a traditional Big Sky crew. And you got the feeling you were watching the old Pac-12 referees who call everything. There's 20 penalties. Oh, it must be a Pac-12 crew. So I'm going to wait before I say they have to clean up their penalties. But I will tell you, they had another bad personal foul. They got a stop on 3rd down. We're going to get the football back, and kept the drive alive, and they got a touchdown out of it. So, I mean, there's mental mistakes that are still happening, and I'm sure if Thomas Ford Jr. was standing between us, he would make sure he would tell you we have to clean all of those up. So.
Before I get to any of the fun stuff, let's recap kind of. I remember the first week we talked a little bit about maybe the wide receivers weren't getting separation. I felt like we saw that a lot, especially on broken plays. Emerson Cortez Menjivar gets that big, hauls in that big catch early on that kind of got some momentum going for the offense. I guess, did you see something from the booth where, it looked like the receivers were doing a little bit better job?
Couple of things. And apologies to St. Thomas, their defensive backs aren't as good as the Cougar defensive backs, okay? That St. Thomas, if there's a weakness on St. Thomas, they're just not as quick. They come from a non-scholarship league. They're not as quick as people that are, getting money to go to school playing scholarships. They gave some cushion. Guys were able to get open because of the cushion. The touchdown pass to Tony Harsty that got called back for offensive pass interference, which in my opinion was a bogus call. And I thought there were bad calls against both teams, especially in the holding area and in the interference areas. I didn't like the way the game was officiated, but that's my opinion, not anybody else's. I think they did a better job, but I think they had more opportunities to do a better job the way that St. Thomas was playing. St. Thomas is going to make Idaho use 14 plays to get down the field instead of something big over the top. And there was only, the late run on the quarterback keeper was really the biggest play of the game for Idaho. They did have one long touchdown pass, but for the most part, St. Thomas made Idaho earn everything they got.
I know Vandals fans probably also wondering. I mean, we air these on Monday. We shoot these on Monday. We got to hear a little bit of Coach Ford's presser. He says Art Williams should be okay, but they're gonna, be able to work him in a little bit more. Just let's talk about that running game. Eli Cummings and some of those running backs and whatnot. What do they have to work with, at least coming into this next week?
In a perfect world, it's Eli Cummings, Nate Thomas, Art Williams, and then Hayden Kinchlow is probably 1 through 4. Kinchlow's more of a bigger guy. He's 220 pounds. He's a guy who's going to get you a yard, and we saw him twice in that game on 3rd and short, pick up first down yardage. That's his role. He's pretty good out of the backfield. Art Williams really good out of the backfield. Nate Thomas didn't play in the first game, came in Saturday in the second game, but I'm not sure he comes in if Eli Cummings stays healthy. Eli Cummings got knocked out in the first quarter. We didn't see him the rest of the way. We have, as of you said, Monday afternoon, we have no information on that, and we got no information on the post-game show. So we'll have to see if Eli Cummings is available. The fact that Nate Thomas came back and looked like Nate Thomas from a year ago when he led the Vandals in rushing touchdowns, he didn't see a lot of action, but he was on the field. He played some, and I would expect to see him even more next week. So that's kind of where they are. It's a three-headed monster that they really like. Now the question is, can they keep everybody healthy? Remember what happened last year when they kept losing quarterbacks, and they were down to 2 healthy quarterbacks on the roster at one point in the season. So let's hope that doesn't happen at the running backs. But right now, as of when we tape this, we don't know the status of Eli Cummings.
This is more of a curious question from my side. I'm not sure if you have an insider scoop or anything from Matt Linehan or anything like that. I'm just wondering, Joshua Wood, we saw him run the ball and basically, make sure that the game was over with that long touchdown run. They also put Rocco Koch in, and Rocco was able to, punch in the ball as well.
Correct.
Is that something we're going to see a lot of?
We're going to see that at the goal line. There's a package of plays for Rocco, short down yardage, running plays. Now, I have been told that he is a way better passer than he was a year ago at this time. But they like his size, and when Rocco came in the game, Kinchlow came in the game. So now you've got Rocco's 220 pounds as a quarterback, and he runs more like a fullback than he does a quarterback when he keeps the football. I would expect to see that package continuing. Rocco's not the number 2 quarterback. So if Joshua Wood can't go or they're way ahead, then Sawyer Teeney, the true freshman from Oregon, is the guy who will come in. But Cook is like, okay, we got a special package and we'll put him in. And he did that a lot last year, the second half of the season.
Okay, so I think we're just about 10 minutes into this. This is when I start asking you maybe some fun questions here and there. How much did you use the Fightin Taters slogan?
I did. The first touchdown, it was touchdown Fightin Taters, and then after that, it was the Vandals. I thought one of the things that smaller programs, doesn't matter the sport, and to be honest with you, in the grand scheme of things, college football, Idaho's a smaller program. They don't get a lot of exposure. And anything you can get that's positive, and every national college football writer that I follow was talking about Idaho and hey, this is a feel-good story. And there's a group of college football writers that love the Kibbie Dome. Many of them have never been to the Kibbie Dome, but they love that Kibbie Dome and that whole Idaho thing. So I think the Fightin Taters was a really cool thing. It's done for way younger people than me. It's done for younger people like
me,
you.
yeah.
25s instead of 67s. But I think if you can get a buzz and a positive buzz, people talking about your program, you put more eyes on it, and who knows what can happen. Who knows if some kid somewhere doesn't say, that looks like a fun place to go to school, or a recruit says that looks like a fun place to play football. They're embracing it. And, good on the athletic department and everybody at the university for embracing this Fightin Taters. I know there was a couple of stick in the muds on social media. We're the Vandals, darn it. We're not the Fightin Taters. But I think it was cool. To me, being an old guy, this Saturday is the 50th. They're celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Kibbie Dome. That, for me, is way cooler than putting Fightin Taters on your helmet one week, even though I do think that's pretty cool. The Kibbie Dome being 50 years old and what it's meant and all the great players. And I wore this shirt for a special reason today.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say about the jerseys. You're going to have to find out on Saturday when you watch this game on SWX.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, now that's a good little tease there. I love it. No, I know. And we also saw the Fightin Taters. They had their own segment, I think, on College Game Day too. So that helps drive some numbers and some stuff to the university.
I mean, we all know about College Game Day that live in our area that we work in the Spokane Coeur d'Alene area, for what Washington State has been able to do with their flag.
Yeah.
If you can get 3 minutes and they're going to talk about your university in a positive way, and that's what they did, and not only that, I don't know who the young lady was, the talent that was reporting on that. She mentioned how many potatoes are grown in Washington, or in Idaho, I should say. If the Idaho Potato Commission is not excited about that, then yeah. So I mean, that was a win-win-win for everybody involved.
Well, I know you kind of touched on the Kibbie Dome thing. I guess my question, I mean, I've seen the Kibbie Dome since I was in high school. I'll say it. I was in the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival.
Correct.
I went down and I played the drums in the Kibbie Dome. I remember before all the upgrades and whatnot. But I mean, from your perspective, what does the Kibbie Dome mean to the Idaho Vandals, to Moscow? I mean, what is the Kibbie Dome to you?
The Kibbie Dome is a place where I think it is more than just a football stadium, a football arena. But I think it was also something that was, hey, this is unique. People forget there was already one dome in the state of Idaho. At Idaho-St, they had built theirs in the early 70s, and a couple years later, University of Idaho put it in there. It's also a place where if you know you're going to a football game, doesn't matter if it's in September or if it's in November or even a playoff game in December, you know the weather's going to be nice. It's going to be a nice atmosphere. But, they've played basketball in there. They've had, if they don't have the Kibbie Dome, they don't have the Hampton Jazz Festival, which the School of Music's not named after him, and a large donation from his family and his state. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things that it means, but I think it's a cool place. Played basketball in there a long time. The first time I covered anything in the Kibbie Dome, I went there. My younger brother was a student there, so I went there in 1970. Would have been the fall of 78.
Oh, wow.
Was the first time I was in the Dome. I saw a football game. And then I went back when I was working in Missoula before I came here in 1984. 1982, I went over for a basketball game between Idaho and Montana. And that's when Don Munson was coaching at Idaho. And the court was in the middle of the football field. And there were 16,000 people. Every seat was full.
Oh, gosh.
And this is like, okay, this is weird. Okay, the old line, there's not a bad seat in the house. When the basketball facility was in the middle, there's not a good seat in the house, but people just came to be part of that event. And I think that's what the Kibbie Dome has done. It can focus now with the ICCU arena for basketball, and they play volleyball in Memorial Gym. They can basically focus on being a football stadium and doing whatever they can do. But there's a track in there. They play tennis in there. So I mean, it's meant a lot to the community. And you know what? If you drive through town, you see it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, we also get to see the Kibbie Dome again. It will be Utah Tech, who the Vandals are playing. Any insider? Do you know a whole lot about the Trailblazers coming to town?
Here's the crazy thing. I didn't even know what their nickname was. Okay,
I had to look it up.
So we mentioned that on the broadcast on Saturday, and Larry Weir, who is the voice of Eastern Washington, was listening to our broadcast and texted us. So we gave him a shout out. Say, yeah, they're the Trailblazers. I don't know anything about them. All I do know is they will be in the Big Sky Conference next year. They're a former junior college, that transition to Division II. The transition to Division I was part of the WAC football, but that kind of is falling apart right now. They needed a place to stay, so they'll be in the Big Sky. So, but this will be a non-league game. This will be the first meeting between these two teams. It will be interesting. They are a team that likes to go.
Yeah.
They're not like St. Thomas last week. We're going to take our time. We don't do a lot of tempo. Utah Tech's going to do a lot of tempo.
Yeah, well, hoping to see a big crowd there at the Kibbie Dome too, because then they got 2 road games right after that, and you get into a Mountain West team, and then you get into the Montana game. It's going to be we'll talk a lot more of that when we get to the next segments.
This is an important game for this team because going to San Jose State next week in Montana, you want to be 2-1. You don't want to be 1-2.
Yeah.
And this is, and again, these games are all important when you're playing FCS teams. And you can make a case, the St. Thomas game and the Utah Tech game are way more important than the Washington State game. Now, I know what the Washington State game means to Idaho Cougar fans, but when the committee sits down and looks at the resume, they beat an FCS team here, they beat an FCS team here. Okay. And if you're an Idaho fan, you're now rooting for Washington State to win as many games as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way it works in this thing. And if you beat San Jose State, you're rooting for San Jose State to win as many games as possible.
Yeah.
Now, I know if you don't want to do that with a school down in the southern part of the state, that's fine. Or if you don't want to do that with Montana, if you go to Montana and beat them, you can root for them to lose all their games. I understand that whole dynamic there. It's like trying to make a Cougar fan understand that it's the University of Washington.
Yeah.
Root for the Huskies to win a game. It's really important. No, it doesn't work that way. But this is an important game when it comes time to playoffs.
Well, perfect. We can't wait. Yep, Saturday. Make sure you watch it on SWX against Utah Tech. Dennis, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back here next week for another edition of Talking Vandals.
See you then.